Did you leave it? No, it fell behind my desk and I can't get it out.
In the training room? Oh my gosh.
Only if your arms were like.
Maybe I could bring my child in. She doesn't have long arms, but they're skinny.
I always get stuck like right here.
Oh, that's right. Yes.
I'm so glad you guys are so willing to step in and help Sarah get her binder.
I know, thanks guys. It really means a lot.
Wow.
Why pine cones?
Because you can't find cones on campus, doesn't look good.
Oh shoot.
Yeah.
I actually like him.
Oh, also,
Pine cones? I like pine cones.
guys, Nikki got hired as a lead today, so she's going to be joining our training.
Wait, is my life about to be over?
No, she's leaving training. I'm sorry I had to find out this way, Sarah. Sarah just found out she was losing Trenton and Nikki in the last 5 minutes. Poor Sarah. Yes, she is taking Mikhail's spot. Okay.
Wait.
Yes, welcome to training. I'm gonna have to make sure I send the right links to you and Logan now, so you guys can catch up. Just a brief overview of yesterday. We talked about trust and relationships and one-on-ones. So yes, no, that was for yesterday. So all good there. You probably already got a lot from the reading that we talked about, so you might not have to watch the whole video. Okay, we're going to start with the video today. If I can get this to pull up. I don't think anyone in here has seen this video, hopefully. It was circling around the team leads for a little while. But hopefully you guys are all new enough you haven't seen it and it's going to be new to you. We're going to start with let's start with a conversation about this topic, maybe if it'll pull up. I didn't know you guys, there's a limit to how many slides you could do in a slideshow. Found out today, you guys. You can't I have like 150 slides and it's like, you need to make a new PowerPoint. So, anyway, we're going to start with mentoring. I was able to get this one in there today, but what is mentoring? Can anyone define it for us?
Can I use the dictionary?
You could. I definitely Googled some things yesterday and thought about putting it in here. I thought maybe I'd ask you guys in case you were smarter than Google. But
No, but I can fix that out. I think mentoring is just using your past experience, your life experience to guide someone who is maybe in like a similar situation that you were in previously.
Yeah, no, that's perfect. It definitely is about somebody who has more experience in an area, helping to develop somebody who has less experience in that area, but maybe wants more knowledge in that place, right? Why would mentoring be important to the BSC? Why do you think that's something we would be learning about?
Well, I mean, Albert Bassman gave a talk a few years ago called, where he talks about that the greatest leaders are the greatest followers. And as we try to become leaders, we need to as well have mentors to whom we can look to, and we can, emulate their example. And as we are in that position of leadership, we're trying to transmit that knowledge to other people so that they can become as well leaders on their own later on.
Yeah, I really like that. And I like that quote from Elder Rasband. You guys will definitely probably in your in your time here experience times when you are acting as a mentor to somebody, or times when somebody's acting as a mentor to you, right? That's one of the beauties, I think, of the BSC, and why we're talking about mentoring today is we have so many opportunities and so many people to learn from here. So it's important for us to consider what we can give to others, but also what we can take from the experience. Does anyone have an example of somebody who has been a mentor in their life? Has anyone ever had a mentor? Somebody who was like one? If not, that's okay. I have a video example, so we can talk about Mr. Jensen. Nobody has an example.
Well, I have a question. So like at work in the BSC, when you guys think, I don't know how to do this, but so-and-so will know how to do it, who do you guys go to? And why do you go to them? Their leads, and they should know more. Do you have one in particular that you go to more than the others?
When she was here, she's gone now.
But
Rest
yeah,
in
I mean,
peace,
you
Alexia.
know, a lot of times when we think about like mentoring and leadership, people who work for you have to buy into you as a mentor or a leader. And so how do you get your employees to buy into you as a mentor or a leader? How do you build that relationship with them so that they want to choose you to come to instead of someone else? So, I mean, that's something to think about. So put it yourselves in their shoes and think about that question is like, who do I go to? Why do I go to them? And what would make me more willing to go to so-and-so instead of so-and-so? Like, what is it that's missing that makes it so you don't want to go to certain people?
Yeah, I really like that. Might actually add that as a future question, but definitely, and I think some of that goes back to trust, right? And credibility, like we talked about yesterday. Those who have credibility are going to be the ones that you trust to be able to be a mentor, have a good voice in that situation. So good things to consider all around. We're going to watch this video. We're going to talk about it afterwards. So I want you guys to just be thinking about this topic of mentoring as you watch. And I'm going to challenge everyone not to cry because I've seen several of these cry during this video. But think about what it is that sets think about what it is that sets Sorry, I didn't bring tissues, so you're on your own. I know the mask one. I know. I just think about what kind of, I guess, mentoring role or what sets Mr. Jensen apart as mentor in this situation after we skip this ad.
I have a lot of memories. One thing that stuck out to me though was when I was about 10 years old. I was in school and I struggled. And I didn't struggle with English, math, or science. I struggled holding still. And I would try to listen and focus and process ideas, but I couldn't help myself. And to be honest, I would sit there and then I would just start tapping. And the students in the class would look at me and they'd say, "Hey, stop tapping." A lot of the time, I didn't even realize I was doing it. And then eventually even the teachers got after me and they would yell at me and they'd say, "Clint, you have to stop tapping." It got so bad that I got sent to the principal's office for tapping. And he said to me, "Okay, maybe when you go back to class, just try sitting on your hands." So I did. I went back to class and when I felt myself starting to tap, I did this. I sat on my hands. And that worked for about 5 seconds. One time I was tapping in class and my teacher, Mr. Jensen, looked at me and he yelled. He said, "Clint, stay after class." And I thought to myself, this is it. I am done. Now, I've always been the type of person that believes that a single moment in time can change a person's life. And this was one of those moments for me, and I will never forget it. So I was sitting there with Mr. Jensen and an empty classroom. He walked past me and he sat next to his desk and he said, "Clint, come here. I want to talk to you." And as he looked me right in the eye, he said, "No, I need you to know something. You're not in trouble. But I do have just one question that I have to ask you." He asked, he said, "Have you ever thought about playing the drums?" And in that moment, Mr. Jensen, he leaned back and he opened the top drawer of his desk. And he reached in and he pulled out my very first pair of drumsticks. He held them in his hands and he looked at me and he said, "Hey, Clint, you're not a problem. I think you're a drummer." That moment on, I've never put those sticks down. I toured, recorded, played drums all over the world. My whole college education was paid for with drumsticks in my hand. Just because of a single moment in time, when somebody believed in me, he saw something in me that I didn't even see within myself. And from that moment, I learned that there's a difference between being the best in the world and being the best for the world.
Okay. Did everyone make it through to my warnings help keep the tears back? I still get a little teary watching that video. It's good. Anyway, why would we be talking about Mr. Jensen, I guess, surrounding this topic, or what do you feel stood out to you in that video or makes Mr. Jensen an example of somebody who could be a mentor?
So one thing that I was reminding me, well, wow, I cannot speak today. Everything I say doesn't come right. But one thing that my mission president taught us, like at Mission Leadership Council, like he would say that when you're a supervisor, you have supervision. And so you need to see like the people that you're over, like from a different level. And I feel like that's what Mr. Jensen did. Like he saw Clint, he saw him like in a bigger view, like in a larger perspective, rather than just like, oh my gosh, there's such a problem, like this is really holding me up. He was able to see that and like spin it and turn it into a strength instead of a weakness. And so I think that we can do the same thing, like we can look for the strengths. And like, I don't know, since we're supervisors, we can have supervision to see things that our agents might not be able to see about themselves.
Yeah, I really love that. And you honestly just hit the nail on the head with what I wanted to talk about today, because what I appreciated about that video and about Mr. Jensen is something that everyone else saw is a problem and a nuisance. He looked beyond to see potential, right? And I would just challenge you, or the reason we're talking about this today is because there may be many times in your position as a supervisor or in life in which there seems to be problems. But a lot of the time, if we can look past the initial problem and look at the person, we find potential and we're able to help them reach potential that they themselves otherwise couldn't see. But it takes taking those moments to slow down in the way that Mr. Jensen did and actually thinking beyond what you can initially see, or searching beyond what you can initially see, right? Before we move on, anything else that stood out in that video to anyone?
To me, it's kind of what Sari was saying. He was able to see Clint's potential, and then not only that, but channel as well that potential. A lot of people are going to have different issues or different, ways to do things. Some people might be super nice over the phone, but sometimes a little too nice. Some others might like to chat a little too long with the customer or with the student. And so it's not necessarily a problem, but it's a way, it's about learning how to channel that and direct that so that they can reach their potential and be able to become who they're supposed to become. Maybe a supervisor, maybe giving them some other tools or responsibilities during the huddle so that they can develop those abilities and use those things that they've been using over the phone, but they're probably not suited for that moment.
Yeah, I'm really glad and I appreciate that you pointed that out, because part of the role of a mentor is that they don't just see the potential, but they do something about it, right? Mr. Jensen provided maybe not all the tools, but he provided tools to Clint to be able to reach kind of his potential, right? He gave him his very first pair of drumsticks. But it's the same as a supervisor or as a mentor. You're not just there to tell somebody their potential, you're there to help them achieve it. And that can be giving them tools, that can be giving them resources. We're going to talk about a few different things that you can do as a mentor to help them, but it's an active role, right? It's not a passive role.
Which is one more thing, I'm sorry.
No, of course, please share.
And it was a crucial conversation. Clint pointed it out. It was every single one of the teachers and students there were telling him that he was annoying. He went to the director's office, which is a big deal. But none of those moments were crucial conversation until Mr. Jensen pointed it out and said, hey, like, I need to talk to you. And then he said, come with me. So just singling that moment and making sure that he's calm. He has already a plan in mind. He knows that he needs to go grab his drumsticks and give them to Clint. So he was prepared, and he knew exactly what was a game plan for that to make it as important as it was going to be.
Nikki?
I think something to point out is that it took time. I think that's something that, like, we imagine that we can see all his potential, we can see all his goodness, but sometimes it takes time to make a shift with the game plan, because they went through a lot of stuff before someone gave us first drumsticks. It's a trial and error situation. And I think that's more common than not, like, to find what we love. Like, even us figuring out what degree we want to do, majority of us don't choose right on the first time. And I think that's something like to keep in mind when we're over these people, is that they're going to fail. We should expect that, but they're also going to have some great successes if we just help them.
Yeah. Mr. Jensen definitely wasn't his teacher beyond that year, right? He probably, maybe they kept in contact, but I'm sure he didn't know probably a lot about how to drum or wasn't a part of his life in that way, right? But he started him off on a path to be able to achieve what he did. And likely you guys won't see all of the fruits of things that happen here at the BSC, but you could be a catalyst or someone who is a part of that journey for somebody who adds a piece to their journey and their puzzle because of something that you've taken the time to do. So we're just going to talk about mentoring here at the BSC and why mentoring is important to the BSC, why it's something that we are talking about. First, it encourages growth. Actually taking the time to mentor means that, and why we're teaching this to you is because we want you guys to understand this needs to be a growing and a learning opportunity. And we talked about this a little bit yesterday, but we have the privilege of being part of their educational experience as well as their work experience. And we want to make sure, and it's one of our goals, to encourage our employees' growth and development while we're here. Also, it allows both you and the employee to learn. I think that as you're a part of those experiences, you're going to learn, hey, that worked, or hey, that didn't work the way that I wanted it to. Or likely the employee will be teaching you a lot of things as they're learning too. So it's beneficial for both of you. And third, it develops leaders. And I really want you guys to consider this as you go into your positions and consider who's been a part of your developmental journey. But it's so important for us to have this attitude of developing our replacements, right? And I wouldn't single any one person out as being your replacement, but look for that leadership potential in all of your employees and be developing them as leaders, because that is how we help meet the mission statement of the university, is to develop those disciple leaders on our team. And we can be a part of that journey, but also it helps provide them with a lot of opportunities too, if you're helping to create them into a supervisor and help them to be ready for when those opportunities come up. So, yeah.
So this is one of those things that I've been at the university for 10 years, and my leadership style is very different than a lot of other people on campus. I really believe in what we refer to on campus as the student leadership model. And And the university, about probably 8 years ago, really decided that they wanted to develop out what they call the student leadership model. And so they kind of gave us the freedom to set up student leadership structures, giving more responsibilities. And when we talk to like the HR office, for example, they're just completely thrilled with what we're doing at the BSC. And one of the things that I've always noticed as I've tried to develop leadership at every level, no matter where I've worked is, and this is the funny part is people always think, oh, well, you're spending so much time and effort and energy and money on the leadership development that you're not focused enough on the day-to-day stuff. And what I've always pointed out is the more you develop them as people and as leaders, the natural consequence is the work gets done and gets done even better. Because all of a sudden they have a desire to make their work better. It becomes more relevant to them. They're more excited about it. And so, I want you guys to feel that same sense of freedom that I have, which is, hey, I'm going to develop my people. I'm really going to spend some time thinking through how to make them leaders, even though they may not have a chance to be a team lead. Like, how could they help them understand that you could be a future leader? All of a sudden, their work's going to get better. Everything that they're doing is going to get better. And so it's just this natural consequence that every time that's been our game plan, and every time we've done that, that's exactly what happens no matter what area of the university I've been working in. I've worked with Jessica for how many years? 6 years? In 2 different
Since my
departments.
second week being up here at college.
So, yeah. So she saw this when we started doing this. We used to work over in the course support area in online. We did the same thing and we had the same success. And so that's the thing I keep coming back to is if I were to prioritize what I care about from you guys, this is one of those things that I care the most about is spending time developing your team and developing leadership qualities.
Yeah, not to call out Brian here, he brought it up a little bit, but I was a music major when I came up here. I was for the first 3 years of my college experience. And now I'm a business management major, and I would have never known or even decided that I was interested in business without the experiences that I've had in my own student employment here. So I just hope like we do have so many opportunities to be a part of people's journey. And it may be different from person to person. Not everyone's going to have a Mr. Jensen experience with somebody, right? You may just play a very small, minor role in that, but it's definitely an active choice to decide to take the time to mentor and to help the people on your team. So that is why we were talking about it. What qualities do you guys think makes a good mentor? We've already talked about some of them for Mr. Jensen. Is there any that you feel haven't been mentioned that make a good mentor?
Patience is always a good one. I think you need to be patient with the people that you're working with because we're all going to mess up. So if you don't have that patience, you're just going to get mad at them all the time.
Yeah, it's definitely a trial and error experience there. You might be able to see where they could be, but they're not going to get there right away, right?
This kind of goes back to yesterday, but empathy is a really important one.
Yeah, being able to put yourself in their shoes and understand where they're at. Yeah, I think that's huge. Like I already said, I think another quality is just this active mindset about it. It's not going to be in your job descriptions, and your senior leads and your coordinators, they're not going to be coming to you and saying, okay, what are you doing to mentor so-and-so? That's probably not a question they're going to ask. So it's definitely something that you have to be thinking about and considering regularly and actively and being intentional about. I wanted to find a better resource I'm going to keep looking, but I thought these were just some initial good points of what you can do to start on your path to being a good mentor. This is from Indeed. But somebody who's a good mentor generally values respect. So they respect the people that they're mentoring as well as value the respect from them. I guess from your mentee to you, right? There's just is respectful relationship about that. Number two, they give honest feedback, kind of like Guillermo was already saying. A lot of the time, these conversations are crucial conversations. It's not always easy to tell somebody like, hey, I think that you have potential and you might be you might be going or looking in the wrong direction. But as we talked about yesterday, a lot of the time having those conversations shows somebody that you care about them enough to tell them what you think they're capable of. So you would give honest feedback. Number three, actively listen. We talked about that already yesterday, but just making sure that you're listening to the point that you understand where they're at and where they need to go, but that you're also listening to what they're discovering and what they're learning throughout this process. Number four, they advocate on your behalf. So this is kind of going back to developing your replacement or developing those leaders around you, but seeing their potential. And then when you see opportunities for them to take that potential to a new level, recommending them for those experiences or pushing them like a lot of your leads did to say, hey, you should apply, or I think that you would do really good with this position, when many of you maybe thought, I don't know if I'm ready for that yet, right? But being their advocate. Number five, knows the industry. So this means knowing and understanding what you're helping them with. And I know you guys are probably still on your journey to understanding leadership yourselves, especially since this is your initial training. I still feel like I'm learning something about it every single day that's new to me. But I'd like to just suggest to you knowing what your employees are doing and staying caught up on that, because you're going to be more removed from the work, and it's important for you to still understand what their day-to-day lives look like and be aware of what their work and their jobs can do for their job skills. So that's what I'd like to suggest in this area, is making sure you're staying relevant in the basics and that you still understand where they're at. Number six, motivates others. So you take the time to help them see the vision, help them see their potential. And then number seven, constantly learns. I really like that this was the last bullet point for what makes a good mentor, is that they're not really satisfied with where they're at, but they continue to look for ways to grow themselves to help other people. Okay, we're going to move on from that and talk about goals. And I know this was part of your guys' homework last night, but why are goals important, or who has a good goal setting experience? We'll just talk about either of those for a few minutes.
I think goals are important because they help you to grow. And when you set a goal, you're able to strive for something, and that helps you to learn and to improve yourself, whether that's in work or other related things.
Yeah, I really like that. It definitely is an intentional way to grow. It's giving you an end point to get to, right? Or a finishing point for you to be able to say, hey, I did that.
One thing that my mom always said growing up is, a man without a plan is just a wanderer, and you always need to have a plan no matter what you're doing. You can change that plan at any time, but you just need to have some type of plan that keeps you moving forward. And so even though like our goals might change as we like keep progressing and as we learn new things, as long as we have a goal, then we're always going to make sure that we are progressing.
Yeah, I like that. That was maybe referred to in our videos a little bit last night, but you have to be intentional about growth, right? And I think many of us have maybe experienced that in our church worship as well. If you're not intentional about it, you tend to not be moving forward, only backward, right? So I think that's the same in most things in life. Anything else? That's okay. we have some more things we're going to talk about. So why are goals required? And I just like to kind of associate this back with what we're already talking about. Goals are required because we want people to grow, and we're striving to push that mentoring experience. And so this is really a huge part of that mentoring process, is having an intentional step in which we are always saying, okay, we want everyone to be helping each other progress. And that's how we do this, is through this goals requirement, by asking you guys to set goals, whether it be with your team, with individuals. It's because we're trying to help move that mentoring process into our culture. And this is a very, I guess, intentional way to do it. So we're going to talk about some just regular guidelines for goal setting that we've established across our teams. Set at, wow, that's a typo, at least one weekly goal with each agent. So like we said yesterday, your one-on-ones may be bi-weekly, but you should be making sure that you're following up on those goals. And it may take them a couple months to reach that goal, but there should be conversations about it regularly and every time that you have a one-on-one. And we need to make sure that we're setting that goal and recording it somewhere where both us and the agent can see it so that they can follow up on that. Number 3, expect the agents to come prepared to make their own goals. People are more intentional about their growth when they connect with what they're trying to achieve. So I think it's totally fair for you guys to set that expectation that you want them to come prepared with what they want to work on, and to have identified that for themselves of what they need to work on. Of course, you can still give them guidance and everything after that as their supervisor, but they will be more attached to the goal and want to achieve it more if it's something that they want. Number 4, give them information about their statistics. They can't probably set well-informed goals if they don't know how they're doing already. And they'll lose traction on their goal if they don't know their progress that they're making. So it's important that you guys are ensuring they're having these conversations regularly about their growth and their project, or their progress, their projects and their statistics, so that you can let them know, like, hey, I've noticed this change. Do you see this as well? Because sometimes it takes that person pointing out the growth that they're making for them to realize and recognize it. And then last is just to prepare ahead of time any ideas for the employee if they don't already come into that conversation having ideas. Some employees might really not know where to begin with setting a goal. So you guys should have some ideas of direction that they can go ahead of time so that you can help them set that goal. And you don't necessarily have to spell it out for them word for word, but you can say, hey, well, if you didn't have any ideas, I noticed this about this thing that you were working on. And so maybe we could set a goal centered around that.
Can I ask a clarifying question?
Yes.
So you're just saying that some agents might not know what kind of goals to set. As team leads, do you guys know what kind of goals you should help them set? Or is it too vague? Like, is it like, oh yeah, I should do this, or we should be doing this, or is it a stretch to try to figure out what goals to help them set?
That's a good question.
I don't know. I personally feel okay with it. Like, I know that not everything that we need to set goals on is going to be on the eye. It's not just like numbers, but as well the attitude of the agent as well. A lot of nonverbal can be whatever they do in between calls, can be the way they interact with others. So it could be that, and obviously key indicators.
Yeah.
Everybody else feel the same way? Is this just a natural, oh yeah, I know exactly what I should help them set goals on? What would be some examples?
I would like to maybe just suggest that I think a lot of that, if you're not sure what to set goals on, comes from the preparation portion of it and reviewing the BSC goals and the BSC statistics, right? If you're not sure what direction to help your employees go, then it's good to look at the direction that we're trying to go as a group and say, okay, how does my team help us achieve this overall goal with the BSC? So it's good to be aware of those statistics and be doing that preparation ahead of time so you have that vision of what direction you should be helping your team members go, right? We're going to talk about some types of goals today. One of them was based off of the videos that you guys watched in your homework, either last night or today. Did everyone get to watch them? I know you have to scroll to the bottom of the page to find them.
I found one of them, but I don't know if that was the right one. It talked about the weight goal, but then I couldn't find these other ones.
Oh, okay.
It's like you can sign up to watch all the videos, and then I signed up, and then that was like, this video is 30 minutes long. And I was like, no.
Interesting. Okay. Did everyone else find the series of 4?
I think I did.
Okay, because I can make sure you get the right 4.
They're all like 4 to 7 minutes, right?
Yes, they're all like 4 to 7 minutes. Yeah, no, that's okay. You probably got a general idea, hopefully. Yeah, make sure you're not paying for a subscription. You get it. I know your bank statement's like Franklin Covey charged you for blessing. Okay. I do want to know, even from Sari, because she probably still got some good stuff from her video that she watched. But what did you guys get out of the videos? Like, what stood out to you? Was there any specific things that they did that you were like, wow, I never thought about it that way?
I liked the scoreboard video just because like last semester I was upstairs and so I never saw like the whole board. So I don't know. That stood out to me because now I actually sit like way above it and I can actually see it. So like last semester wasn't as important to me because I just didn't see it.
Yeah, that was one thing that stood out to me a lot when I first saw the video, was kind of the example he shared about the football game that happened after the hurricane and the scoreboards have been blown down. So within the first few minutes, nobody was really paying attention to the game. And I think that's huge, and that's where we come back to the statistics part of it, is if people don't know the score, they're not going to pay attention to the game, right? So we need some visible way or some regular way that we're reminding them of the score and who's winning or who's losing and how we fix that, right? Anything else? Logan?
Yeah, I like his focus just on like simplicity. I thought the videos were kind of funny. They're like kind of like reading rainbow style. How they had like the screen behind them and like zoom in or whatever.
They totally were.
But just how like simplicity can be achieved through establishing dimensions. So like I really like the last video about the store, where the goal was like raise profit, but then each section of the store had like a different dimension of what would lead to that. So for like the meats, it was like we need to have a good display, and that was like the one thing that they focused on. Because I think when you're looking at like, oh, I need to do this and this and this and this, and I'm being graded on this and this and this, it's kind of hard. But I think there's a really important question, like what is the one thing you can do this week to help us get towards our goal? And then knowing like, okay, this is what leads to success in my position, I think it's a lot easier to make a goal based off that.
Yeah, I really liked that example, that story of that store that was struggling until they started doing these accountability meetings. I think it's important to have these regular accountability type conversations to say, okay, you might have set a pretty big goal, but what's the one thing we're going to focus on right now to get there? Also, when we're looking at goals in a bigger view as the BSC, or even in your individual areas, you have to consider, okay, what's the one thing that we can do as a team to contribute to this goal? Because you can't go to every other area and say, like, what are we all doing to achieve this goal? You have to focus on your own area and say, okay, what are we doing to get there? And then depend on everyone else to get there as well, right? Thanks, Logan. Anyone else?
I feel like I'm talking a lot, but
Please share, Sari. We love to hear you talk.
So one thing that I really like is having people come up with their own ideas for how they can improve, and like how when people set their own goals, they're more motivated to like do something to change. And that's something that I really struggle with because I really like to fix things and I'm really like, you can totally do this. Like, you're just so awesome. Let's, like, how can I like make you see this? But when people come up with their own goals and they like come to their own realization, like, oh, this is important, or like whatever I'm working on is important, and like I can have an impact, then you're going to make such a bigger difference. Like, they're going to be able to make a bigger difference because it's their motivation, not yours, like being pushed onto them.
Yeah, they need to be intrinsically motivated, right? They have to be attached to the goal that they're setting. And so it's so important to encourage them to come up with it on their own so that they have that attachment to it. I can't even tell you, there's been so many times that, and I think this comes back to the patience part of mentoring, but there's been so many times that I've had a conversation with Brian and been like, okay, I have this idea. And he's been like, man, I've been waiting for you to come to this conclusion or whatever it is. And sometimes you have to do that. You have to plant those seeds and have the conversations and then let them come to the conclusion on their own. You know what I mean? But people will be more motivated if they can see where they're going themselves and they know why they want it. So we're not going to go into the specifics of this because I know you guys probably got more information than I could give you watching those videos last night. But this is just a type of goal. I know part of the other part of your homework was talking about SMART goals, which I think we learn about in most of our classes here. Maybe it's just me. I feel like they teach it a lot here at the university, but that's because it's effective. And it's a great guidance for how we can break down those goals into making them more effective or seem more achievable, right? So keep those in mind as well. We can have wildly important goals, but also the principles taught by SMART goals are really helpful when you're trying to help your employees set effective goals. And that's where you come in, is they should have the idea about goals, but a lot of them might not know what direction to take the goal in order to make it seem achievable or measurable. And so you guys can come in and say, okay, I think it's great that you want to raise your escalation rate or complete your project by this date. But how do we make that measurable, or how do we set that in stone so that we have a timeline that we're going to follow up on that? So based off of your homework that you guys did, this was also in your homework. We'll talk about this really quickly. Here at the BSC, I've just observed we have 4 different types of goals that we can use as supervisors as a resource, right? And each of you may be using these in different ways. Some of you may be participating in, for example, I know the contact center does the WIG goals and your teams come and say what they're doing to help with the goal. Some of you may be in a position like Logan where you're trying to look at a whole team and say, okay, what can I do to help my whole team and not just everyone. So these are the different types of goals, and you're going to have to consider what tools and resources you're going to be a part of and how you're going to be a part of them. But you have work goals. That should always be just a permanent staple in every conversation that you're having. Another tool you have is personal goals, and this is a tool that you can use to help build that relationship and be a part of your employees' lives, is to ask about a personal goal that they're working on and help them know and understand, like, I don't just care about your work achievements, I care about your outside achievements as well. Number 3, team goals. So like I said, this could be a WIG goal, or this could just be something that you're like, hey, as a team, I want us to work on responding to all of the tickets that came in last night, or improving our escalation rate, whatever it is. If you see that your whole team is struggling, bring them together into one centralized focus and have them work as one. That can definitely be helpful as well. This is just a quote. Great teams know at every moment whether or not they are winning. They must know, otherwise they don't know what they have to do to win the game. So that kind of comes back to the scoreboard idea. We have to keep them updated or they're going to lose track. We're just going to do one of these, because I want to talk about hiring before we finish up. But these are just some general goals practices. And so this is kind of the situation that's been posed to you as the supervisor, right? I want anyone to just pick one of them and think about how you can help them come up with a concrete goal. So a goal that's achievable. and we'll break it down.
Oh, you individually picking one?
We can do it all together if you want.
I love this.
Okay.
We'll go with that.
Let's do number 2. Okay, so Ron has a 75% QA average. He really wants to get it up before the lead application opens. Something he misses regularly is giving the correct answer. So, bless Ron. Okay. What kind of goal? So let's say that this is the situation that Ron posed to you of what kind of goal he wants to set. How can we help him direct his goal? What kind of goal could we help him set?
I'm just thinking of the one QA question that mentions using the KB article during the phone call. I think that could be a really good way to like kind of guide him that way to see, because if you're using the KB in your phone calls and you're using the information from there, you're not going to get the answer wrong. If you ask clarifying questions and so forth. So I think that would be a good like stepping stone maybe, or a good goal that you could.
Yeah, I think that's definitely a good direction, because if you're not using the knowledge base article, then you're probably giving the wrong answer and missing using the knowledge base article in your QA, right? So that's going to knock you down a good 40 points sometimes if you get it wrong. So that would be a good direction. What's maybe like some wording how could we put that into a goal? Like a specific thing we could write down. Logan?
Like study the KB between calls for at least 10 minutes each day.
Hey, that's a good one. That's a really good one. And that gives you an actionable item, right? He knows, okay, in between phone calls, I'm going to spend 10 minutes looking at the KB, right? Definitely gets him more familiar with it. So maybe if Ron gets nervous on the phone call because he's not familiar with the KB, that would be a really good approach for him. Any other thoughts?
I was just thinking maybe a preliminary thing to do is to see if there's a really specific area that he's missing questions in. So that it's a more, the KB is pretty broad. So if it's in everything that he's missing, the correct answer, then yeah, I guess you have to start broad. But can you give him a more focused area to work on first? Maybe it's financial aid that he's missing the most in, and then have him move into the next area.
Yeah.
Probably.
Yeah. No, I really like that. I think we can be investigators sometimes as leads. So maybe they're like, I just don't know why I can't get my QA up, but I want to, and that's my goal, right? So then hopefully we've done the research, but if we need to dig into it more, we can go back and look and say, okay, what have his last 3 QAs looked like? Oh, they were all financial aid and he missed the answer, so having him study the financial aid knowledge base articles.
So you're talking about going back to the QA. I would re-listen the call and pay attention to the tone of the agency and how nervous he is. If he's actually just rushing through the call because he just wants to get done with all that. If he is rushing through the call, that's probably why he's not as well looking at the KB, taking time to look at it. And so probably just telling him, hey, you can use your hold button. Just make sure you come back to the call and let him know after right before the 2-minute mark. Hey, I'm still looking for some more information, and use as well the resources using the lead if he can't find any information there before giving any answer.
Yeah, I really like this conversation of there's probably other underlying things going on where we can help him really direct his focus, right? So maybe it's that he doesn't know financial aid. Maybe it's that he panics, right? And he feels so nervous that he doesn't read through the knowledge base articles. So maybe that's setting a goal to take a few deep breaths when you're looking, or to put them on hold more. But but I love this conversation. And a lot of the time, this is part of that mentoring process, is getting down to the root of the problem and looking past what you're initially being given, right? Good conversation, everybody. We're going to talk for the last few minutes about hiring. Everyone's going to be a part of the hiring process in some way or another. It's going to be different depending on what position you're in. You may be actually conducting the interviews. You may be helping with preliminary interviews. You may be helping review applications for somebody who might be coming into your team. But here at the BSC, you guys, as part of this leadership model, are part of the hiring process a lot of the time. So has anyone ever participated in hiring before? Awesome. 4, 5? It's okay, Logan. You've been interviewed, so that's part of the hiring process. From your guys' experience, or just from your own knowledge, what do you feel like makes a good candidate?
So I haven't been in the hiring process here at the BSC, but my other job, what we do is we look a lot at the EQ, the emotional quotient, and see how they blend well in the culture that we establish in the company or in the team that they're going to be working with. So that's really important. Besides just their skills, because their drive is going to determine as well how willing they are to develop those skills and how rapidly they can reach that goal.
Yeah, I really like that. Something I didn't initially think about as I started doing research on this topic was the cultural aspect. And it's so important to make sure that you see a candidate as being able to fit in and understand your vision, because if they don't fit in with the culture of the company or understand the vision of the company, you're likely as a supervisor going to have a really hard time with them, right? There's going to be aspects of the job that they're not going to understand. So I like that a lot. I think something else you can consider as you're looking at how they fit into a team, the way that you were talking about, is what skills they bring. So maybe they're adding something your team's missing. Maybe they're contributing to something your team's already doing. But that's a good thing to think about too. Yeah.
So this probably changes depending on what level of a company you're at, for example, that you're hiring. If you're hiring a frontline employee, for example, what we require of them is a lot lower than what you would have like the requirements for a manager. So then it would be, like, you would look at the basic skills, which probably they have on their resume, but then you have to go back to, the culture, the fit, and attitude. So depending on the level and the type of job that you're part of the hiring for, it totally changes. Like, I was just on a hiring committee for someone for an IT position because I work really closely with that department, but I wasn't there to determine if they had the skill set in IT to get hired. I was looking for fit for the university and for someone that I wanted to work with across departments.
Yeah, I really like that. It's important that you consider the fit, and the fit is huge. And we're going to talk about that a little bit more. But really quickly, we're just going to talk about what hiring looks like at the BSC. Like we've already stated, supervisors have different hiring responsibilities. So you may be asked to be a participant to look for fit. You may be the one conducting the interviews and making the decision. You may be a part of a panel of people making the decision. And you may be part of the preliminary process of the hiring here. I know that they've started doing phone interviews and screening interviews in a lot of our departments as well. So also, supervisors have different pools of talents to hire from. So you have to consider that. If you're working on the phones team, you're going to be the initial onboarding team. In a lot of the cases, nobody's ever worked at the BSC when you're hiring them to work on the phones team. If you're working in CX, they've probably worked several places in the BSC, like was Logan's experience before going there, or they may have only worked in one area, but a lot of the time CX and other groups are pulling from the phones team. Chat is generally a mix of both. They do a little outside hiring, they do a little inside hiring. So there's a lot of movement within our department that you have to consider when you look at what happens with hiring here. Many of us follow the same general process, so I'm just going to teach you the basics of how the hiring process goes. And number one starts with recruitment. And recruitment has to do with the posting of the job opening, right? Getting the word out there about your job opening. That might be internally, that might be externally, but finding a public place to be able to say, hey, we're hiring, and trying to get people to look at your group. And then it comes down to application review. And this is when you're going to go in and look at applications and resumes and try to weed out as many people as you can to get the best people to interview. And that's important because from this part of the process, you can go in and see what kind of skills someone has and if they align with your group or not. Interviews take a lot of time. So if you're interviewing everyone who applied, you're going to be spending a lot of time that you would otherwise spend on other work to be finding the right person. Interviewing, this is when you're really trying to narrow down that field by actually talking to somebody in person. Then this is the fourth one is hiring. This is when you probably are getting together with other people to discuss who you want to pick and then extending that invitation. And a lot of the time it looks like going around the table and talking with everyone about what they noticed was good or what they were hesitant about with that person. And then you have post-hiring. I don't think we always think about what happens after you hire somebody, but after you extend an invitation, it's important to do the post-hiring process, which is sending all the rejection emails to everyone who didn't get hired so that they know, but also doing all the onboarding stuff like getting them permissions, getting them hired in the system, making sure that they're set up with training if that's what they need. All of that work afterwards. So we're going to talk real quick about recruitment. I wanted to show you guys some more pictures because I know this one is classic, but there's a lot of interesting recruitment ads if you guys want to go look. Recruitment starts with a job posting most times. It includes generally a job description, the job expectations, and the best kind of recruitment has some sort of description about culture, or it has some things about the vision in there, because when you put the culture and the vision in what you're advertising to people, it's going to draw the kind of people that you want to your company. And then
we've spent a lot of time looking at our job posting over the years, and we've changed it. But that's something, you know, you guys ought to consider as well. It's like, because the job description helps you filter out those who don't meet those basic requirements. And if that's not in your job description, then you're going to get the wrong kind of people applying for your job.
Yeah. You may still get people applying for your job, you don't meet the requirements, but you're definitely going to help them see like, oh, I have experience in that in my previous job. This might be something I'm interested in or qualified for. And then the second option for recruitment is to ask for recommendations. We have so many people here that have really good recommendations oftentimes. So, and if you're working in another department that's hiring within the BSC, recommendations can be really helpful because they've already worked with that employee. They might be able to point out some people who would do really well in your area. Then you have the application. Some general things you guys should look for, and we're getting low on time, but that they're professional, they have job experience in your area. That's always beneficial. Sometimes you're just looking for job experience, and that they have similar cultural experience to what your company is looking for. And then you're going to do the interview. It's important in the interview that you're asking the right questions to be able to narrow down the field of candidates that you're looking at. So that's going to be a combination of job skills as well as cultural fit questions that will help you gauge what kind of employee you're bringing into the group and not just help you get to know the person across the table from you. Also, something that I recommend you look for is their potential for leadership. A lot of the people here on campus that you interview, you can find leadership potential in them from an initial interview. And when you're bringing those kind of people to your team, you're often bringing some of the best people that you can add to your team. Hiring. So make sure as you guys are discussing your decision in the future that you're weighing all your options. You're talking about everybody, your concerns, the positives about it. Oftentimes, I think we get the best people when we're talking about who we're interested in for usually over an hour is most of our lead decisions in my group. But make sure everyone is talking about what they've noticed, because that's when you're going to find the best person. And then my third recommendation would just be, if you don't have to, don't settle. If you don't get a good group of people the first time, then keep looking. You will not regret, and you guys will see this, and this is why we're talking about this today. You won't regret looking for the right person, because bringing the wrong person into your team can create problems with mentoring, with goal setting, often leads to disciplinary action. We just want to make sure we're preventing all of that from happening before we ever bring a person onto our team. And then, like we've already talked about, it doesn't end with that. You have the onboarding and post-hiring work that happens after, and likely most of you won't be part of that process, and you can leave that up to your coordinators or whoever is a part of it. But it's important to go through the whole checklist and make sure that the things are getting done that need to get done after the job invitation has been extended. Oh, I had thoughts from tomorrow. Anyway, we're gonna leave it at that, you guys. Any questions? Are we good? No homework tonight. I have a hiring simulation I'm working on, and I'll let you know when it's done, but you guys don't have to worry about it right now. There's some videos